Silver Doctors, live on air. My name is Mike, the co-host, along with my better half here, Mr. Paul Half Dollar. Paul, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good today, Mike. How you doing today?
Doing great as well. And so we're logging in this Monday afternoon because there's a lot of things worthy of our time and attention. So we're going to try to get to as much of it as we can. And as always, for those that are watching, if you have any thoughts or anything, there's a number, 567-336-0844. And then there's also a chat that you guys can chime in, let us know your thoughts, and go from there. So before we dive any further, we'll acknowledge the presence of a couple people. So let us know where you're watching from, and we'll definitely make your presence felt by acknowledging you. So we got SG Fans. Says you guys are awesome. Appreciate that. We got Anthony says Modi and Trump, Hitler and Stalin. So yeah, we can share some thoughts on that. And we got Alpine, we got the Terry, we got Silver Mamba, we got Great Lakes Traveler, Daniel. How you guys doing? We got FJ from Iowa. So appreciate you guys hanging out with us. And so Paul, Half Dollar, a couple things we want to definitely touch on. So why don't you kick it off and let us know what you got on your mind, and then I'll chime in accordingly.
Okay, well, just to start off, the central thing that's been on my mind, last week there were a couple dominant themes, right? We had the whole attack on the Saudi Arabian oil facility, and we also had the Fed, right? And there were a couple things with the Fed, but those two things were in focus all week last week. This week, what I'm seeing is that there's not really a catalyst one way or another that the mainstream media is laser focused on. It's kind of all over the board. Some people are talking about this Trump Modi thing. Some people are talking about this, whole Biden Ukraine scandal thing. Some people are talking about, the Fed still, the residual effects. So my point here is that we're kind of like in a calm before the storm. Where like last week there was plenty of uncertainty, but nothing really came about it, and it's kind of just calmed down. And my point is when we have these kind of situations in the marketplace, this is where something can come out of left field, right? People call these black swan events, where something swoops down and is totally unexpected and it wreaks havoc in markets. So I'm like kind of with a heightened sense of alert this week, wondering what's going to dominate the news waves this week as we move forward here.
Yeah. And so what I'm watching the most and what I've been talking about the most is the whole 24-hour lending aspect. And so just watching how that right there, to me, it is the catalyst. It is the signal that I think we've all been waiting for, because it's unofficially QE4. And then I also saw an article that came out over the weekend. I saw from Zero Hedge where I think it was Bank of America was quoted as saying that what's currently coming is going to be QE4. And I'm thinking, as I've been looking at the Fed balance sheet for the last couple of days, seeing the spike up due to those last week's treasuries, and then today the repo market also being open and them extending it until October 10th. So my question would then be, why October 10th? Between now and that time frame, are they willing to be so accommodative to financial institutions that are all of a sudden short on liquidity when this entire system is designed to keep them liquid? So what happened to those funds? And if they do borrow, if you can't afford to pay your bills within a 24-hour period, how will you be able to repay back the loan you take out type of thing? So, so that's kind of where I'm at. So I think that the trigger that I was looking for is already taking place, because the question will be, come October 10th, will that be the last day? And my answer at this current moment will be no.
Good points. Hold on a second. I just want to adjust one thing. Someone says I'm echoing. Can you still hear me as like I'm echoing?
I cannot. No, it's all good on my end. And so let me see. Okay. All right. So I realized what I would do is I'll put in an earpiece, because I added you. So last week we had that little situation where I added you in. So you're good to go now. So I have to listen to you through my earpiece. So there we go. So we're good.
Okay. Awesome. And I think you're making an interesting point, because like Zero Hedge is trying to downplay these liquidity injections. And as far as like in the mainstream media, it's not really the talk of the town. And as far as like on Bloomberg, well, they're talking about the whole Ukraine thing. Yeah. So it's kind of like, this is kind of like trying to be held hush hush in the mainstream. Yeah. And I find it very interesting because, it is QE, right? It is money printing. Yeah. And this is one of the things that I've been talking about, for a while now, is all these people who think there's a dollar shortage out there, well, just last week, the Fed has showed us that there is no dollar shortage because they're willing to do whatever it takes to pump dollars into the system.
Right.
So for everybody to just be like, oh, there's a dollar shortage, just wait, the dollar's going to strengthen. Well, we just got shown the exact opposite last week. And it's continuing through at least until October 10th. And, what they're calling it now is, and it's, remember like a few months back, you were like, what's going to be the new name for it? It's the dumbest new name in the world. It's called like POMO, right? So Permanent Open Market Operations. So that's the new name of this Fed liquidity injection program daily. And this is tens of billions of dollars, right? So this is not an insignificant amount. This is way more than the QE that they were doing before.
Yeah.
I mean, are they going to inject literally $50 billion? Let's say it's, 30 billion. What is that? Like 900 billion a month?
Yeah.
Right? 30 times. Well, obviously it's not 5 days a week, so my math is off. But let's say it's 20 days. That's, $600 billion a month they're going to pump into the banking system. I don't know.
That's way more than in QE that was old years. So what I did is actually pulled up from FederalReserve.gov the balance sheet activity for the last 10 years. And so as you can see here, we got QE1. Let me go back up. Oops. So we got QE1 right here. Then we got QE2 here. And then we got QE3 here. They were attempting to normalize things back to what they were prior to the great financial crisis. But as we're all seeing and witnessing that there will be no such thing as normalizing to where they can shrink this balance sheet. And so it was a little bit of a downward spiral because of the tightening aspect. But we see that they couldn't continue tightening. So I'm going to zoom in here. And this is the last couple of months of activity right here on the screen where we see a drop of the tightening aspect. And then within the last week, this thing has spiked up significantly. And so this is also outdated because this doesn't count for the last, I think, Thursday and Friday, I think. But just this little spike up right here from 3.76 trillion to 3.84 trillion equates to $75 billion. So this spike here is 75 billion, and that's just the beginning because this is already outdated, as I mentioned. And so my question to you, Paul, is how much more will this thing be going up in the near future and nevertheless the long-term future as they try to keep this thing going?
Yeah, well, they're trying to make it sound like it's no big deal. And remember, they completely avoided it in the press conference last week. Jerome Powell completely avoided it altogether. No big deal. And it's just like Rob B is pointing out in the comments, zero hedge is not the same zero hedge. I agree. I have my suspicions about that.
So you think they've been compromised?
Oh, totally. I think it's totally going to be part of the Trump 2020 re-election campaign with a lot of dollars going in there. Look, when you're a top 1,000 website in the entire world, so for that matter, I think they're like 650 or 750, somewhere around there. You're not alternative. You're mainstream media, right? So, but anyway, so they're trying to downplay it. Everybody else is not covering it. Jerome Powell's avoiding it. And yes, this is massive stimulus on a daily basis, and nobody just wants to admit what's going on now. It's like the Fed has just come out with this shocker and it's just blowing over everybody. And here's the other thing, right? This is what we know about, right? What we don't know about, what if there are dark pools out there, right? What if there are offshore, off-books accounts that we don't know about that's pumping liquidity into the markets also, So this is only what we see on the surface. What's going under the surface can be in a lot worse condition.
Right. I do agree. And then also, you factor in that whole 21 missing trillion type of talk as well. So that's what has been revealed via the examination of the balance sheets currently of off-book stuff with the house, all that stuff like that. So that's one thing that we kind of know about. And so there's a question here, or a thought here, or a question rather, from Low Blood Pressure. He says, if QE 1, 2, and 3 didn't skyrocket silver, is QE 4 enough to rocket fuel? And so my thought is QE4 will not just be a temporary installation of some liquidity. It's going to be an ongoing accommodative policy. So it will become the new norm of the Fed directly interacting and purchasing everything they can to keep this thing flowing. So how can it not spill over to other assets, especially suppressed metal prices that we all know are artificially been kept down because of their true inherent nature of being considered money? And so I think it'll be hard for the metals not to absorb some of this newly found printed digital currency come price valuation time. So that's just my thoughts there, Paul. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think those are great points. You know, this has been one of my themes lately, ever since one of the people brought it up in the chat. But I really like the expression of the great print, and I look at that as the 2009 to present. That was the great print. But you know, from 1913, we've had that slow hyperinflation, which is that, you know, that chart we always pull up. Then 2008, 2009 to present has been the great print. So yes, QE4 will be the rocket fuel, because that's going to be the crack up boom. How long it lasts? Could it last an entire year? It could, because when we watched Venezuela disintegrate, you know, that took the span of a couple years. But on the other hand, we are talking about the US dollar and the world reserve currency, and it could go quick once it starts growing exponentially. You know, so we're in for some very interesting times here. Yes. You know, one of the things that I was saying when I wrote my rap, or not my rap, my outlook this morning, is that we're kind of like in a calm though, right? Like the markets haven't fully brought this in. Everybody's trying to downplay it. Oh, it's no big deal. And then the whole thing with Saudi Arabia is weighing down. The price of oil's gone back down. You haven't really heard, you know, the war drums beating too loud. And then next week, right? Next week is Golden Week, where all the markets in China are closed. So I'd like to bring this up about this week, right? When I say I'm looking for some sort of event to happen, right? You know, this is psychological warfare, and the United States has the upper hand right now, because are we in a trade war with China? That's what they make us want to think. Are we in a currency war with China? That's what they would make us want to think. Is there a geopolitical risk? That's what they make us want to think. So think about this, Mike. If China's going to be closed all week next week, wouldn't the United States really love to just, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, throw a whole bunch of chaos and turmoil into the markets this week? Because I use this example, right? Imagine that you're going to go visit family across the country over Thanksgiving week for the entire week, right? So you're going to be gone. Now, the week before you leave, right, you live in a small town. The week before you leave, some crazy arsonist is going around burning down houses, and he burns down 10 houses a day. Right? Now, are you going to leave that small town for an entire week knowing that there's an arsonist on the loose burning down 10 houses a day? Because to me, that sounded like, you know, that's a major emotional, psychological stress, right? So this is why I'm saying, if the U.S. goes in there and creates some kind of market turmoil with China going on holiday next week, that could be a little bit of psychological warfare going on. Does that make sense, or does that not make sense?
It does make sense. And so my follow-up question will be, to accomplish what? Because we're supposed to be having these trade talks, if I'm not mistaken, at the beginning of October or right around next week or two. So apart from just the continuation of this tit-for-tat propaganda, illusionary distraction of what's really happening with the world problems, what's the point in trying to disrupt talks if it's about balancing trade, as what Trump has always mentioned? Because once again, why rattle and piss people off when you're trying to solve some problems supposedly? But yet, so why would they do that? Would be my question.
Well, because if you're following the logic of it is a trade war, it's to give us the upper advantage by bringing China to their knees, by having them act on emotion as opposed to having them act with logic and with reason, right? Because they're emotionally scarred from the turmoil and not being able to do anything about it for a whole week in the markets. So that's my point with that there. Because, you know, we're looking for, like, you know, we talk about like the analogy of dry tinder and all this gunpowder around just looking for a spark. So my question is, what's going to be the spark, right?
Yeah. The spark. That's a good question. So watch this. We were talking about the spark. What's going to be the spark? So let's put it out there to the audience. Let's find out what our viewers think a spark could be, or are we seeing sparks now? We're just not recognizing them as that. So let's find out from the audience via chat, or call in and share your thoughts. So we're talking about a spark, a trigger, the very first domino, or has the dominoes already begin to tumble to where things are already unfolding. We just haven't deciphered it and have become going good up until now. Reconnection successful. So it looks like we are back online. So let's see if it start a new stream or not. And so we are live again, I believe. Okay. And so let me make sure everything is good. So as always, when the conversation gets really good, something happens. So for those that are watching, let me know if we're still in the same flow of things via chat. We are back. So somebody says we are back. Okay. So let's keep on moving from there. Apologize for that small hiccup.
Um, and since there's no clearly defined spark this week, like there was last week, which could have been war with Iran or, the Fed funds, the Fed repo market interventions, that's definitely a spark, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of died down a little bit as far as not playing it up or not making it out to be a big deal.
Yeah.
So, my point is there's just a lot of little things where any one of them could be the spark. And I'd like to talk about a few of those little
Paul,
things.
so before we move any further, we do have a call. So let's get this caller here. So hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is B. I can't post in the live stream, and I have one theory.
Yeah, you can't post in live feed. You have one theory. Go ahead and share that with us.
Theory is, did you notice how China just suddenly left last week when President Trump hit Iran with those heavy economic sanctions?
Did we notice how China left when Trump hit Iran with those economic sanctions? No, I didn't notice that exact response from China, but share your thoughts on it.
China was over here visiting or negotiating or something, and then suddenly left Friday. I have a theory that they're going to side with Iran.
I wouldn't doubt that they are going to side with Iran because I know they have some energy deal in the process now. I think it's $400 billion I saw. And so I don't doubt that they're going to side with Iran because it's definitely they're receiving oil, I believe, from Iran. So, yeah, I definitely see where that's coming. But I didn't know they left out of this country here on Friday. So that's something different there. Paul, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it was Friday morning. President Trump hit Iran with those heavy sanctions economically. And then later that day, China just suddenly, unexpectedly left. So.
Interesting. I appreciate you for sharing that, my friend. Thank you. I didn't know they left that fast based upon what looks like those sanctions being passed. I think it was an Iranian bank, the national bank there. So appreciate you for sharing that, my friend. Thank you.
Okay, I'm W space B. I need to be able to post in the live stream. Thank you.
W space B. Okay, we'll try to fix that. Yeah, so I'm not sure. It looks like he might be blocked. I don't know. I didn't block anybody, but
I don't know what I need to do to set that up.
W space B. Okay, so we appreciate you calling and sharing that. As of now, I don't see any W space B. But Paul, you want to comment on that? It looks like he said China left on Friday.
Yeah, well, just in general, what I want to, it says participants, but anyway, I can't figure out how to do that just now. But so we're live, right?
Yeah, we're live. Yep.
Okay. One of the things I want to say is tomorrow is the UN General Assembly, right? So, there could be some serious fireworks tomorrow at the UN General Assembly. It's interesting because last year President Trump gave a speech and he got, standing ovations and this and that. And he was like, the United States is never, ever going to tell another nation what to do. Like he literally said that. And then like a week later, we were saying that, Maduro was the illegitimate president of Venezuela and we were only going to recognize Guaido. But my point is, if there's a lot of this geopolitical tension right now, things could get a little bit, interesting tomorrow at the UN General Assembly. So, I'll be looking forward to that too, to see if anything comes out of that.
Yeah. Now, so tomorrow UN Assembly, is that where I think Saudi Arabia will be attending to share their findings? Is that meeting? Because I know that Saudi Arabia was coming over to the UN to lay out their case. So is that going to be that tomorrow as well?
I guess it would be. As far as the specific calendar events, I'm not sure. But, the UN, because they have their convention once a year, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what's on the agenda. I haven't dived into it that much, other than the fact that with all this geopolitical attention, that's surely going to be an interesting one this year.
Yeah, and with that same thought of Saudi Arabia coming over here to lay out their case before the UN on this recent attack, whatever, and I've heard a lot more stories about how all those pieces aren't adding up based upon the results of the findings, based upon a little bit of investigation that was done by Saudi Arabia. But anyway, it looks like Iran, who were supposed to come over, also share their thoughts. They weren't allowed visas in time to come over, so it looks like Iran won't be able to come over here to defend themselves. Coincidentally, I guess. So
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
The last I heard that they were looking for the smoking gun proof and the GPS systems, but I don't know where it's gone from there since then.
Yeah, that is very interesting that they won't be able to defend themselves, but they'll definitely be bashed heavily with
And I know I'm kind of all over the board here, but just to follow up on that one point about psychological warfare before our live stream got cut out.
Yeah.
Because my point is, we didn't see the summer doldrums in gold and silver this year. It was a very interesting summer. And the cartel loves to go in and strong arm gold and silver during Golden Week because it's the entire week that the Chinese markets are shut down. Shanghai Stock Exchange, Shanghai Gold Exchange, basically all of the markets in China, right?
Yeah.
All the financial markets. And why do they like to do that? Well, think about it like this, right? If you're a babysitter, is it easier to babysit one kid or two kids?
One.
It's easier to babysit one kid, right? So if they don't have to worry about the Chinese markets and what the Chinese Shanghai Gold Exchange and all these other markets are doing during that week, then it's much easier for them to go in there and strong on gold and silver because they only have to control one kid. The United States markets, well, technically they'd have to control Europe and stuff like that as well. But the point is they don't have to worry about the Chinese for a whole entire week. But I'm not so sure that they can go in there and strong on the markets next week because we talk about in the bull market, people buy on the dips, right? So if they do go in there and smash price, people are going to come in and buy on the dips because there's no doubt that we're in a gold bull market right now. See, before from 2000, call it 2011 to 2000 and late 18 or even the first half of 2019, you can call it a bear market, but now there's no disputes. So, those are just a few of the reasons why I think the cartel is stuck here and why I think that, we could be looking for a black swan event in addition to the fact that I think that the United States would like to create turmoil going into next week.
Yeah. Okay. So say, for example, we get into next week and there's no type of catalyst that really causes markets to outrightly correct the way that they would like for them to. If there is a intervention of some kind in the precious metals market, what type of dip do you see initially? Like, what type of slam would you see on gold? Will it be small or will it be like something big, in your opinion?
I don't know. I don't think they can go big.
Big?
We've seen them try to go big. They've gone under $18 several times last week, and we're sitting here at $18.60 right now.
Yeah.
They would not want silver here if they didn't have to have it here. So I don't think they can go big because 1,500 has been holding as stout support for the price of gold. And, 18 has been not strong support, but between 1775 and 1825, definitely we've been in that good range. And I think that the breakout rallies are starting again, especially with the Fed coming in there money printing. Because it's like you said, we had the inflation in the financial assets. This next time QE is launched, which it already started, or even argued before then when you brought up the whole bond market things a few months ago. Well, that's just going to, add fuel to that fire. The fuel to the skyrocket.
Yeah.
So I don't think they can go in there with a huge smash for the three reasons. We're in a bull market and people buying the dips because they would like to create psychological warfare against China if this is indeed for real with the trade war. And also because, we didn't have the summer doldrums and it's been exciting. So they don't have, they're at a disadvantage if they were going to start with the smash right now.
Yeah. Now, I want to, something just came to mind that I thought I would share because I just came across this article. And this was published as of Friday, and I'll pull it up on the screen now. And it's from CNBC, and it says, Goldman Sachs says the market is about to get wild in October. And so I read through some of the article there, but it just talks about the typical past trends on how in October there's always some stock volatilities. And so earlier, as we were talking, I mentioned how the Federal Reserve placed their time window of their accommodative policy up until October 10th. I wonder, is that October time frame of the 10 days or so factored into this possible volatility to try to help counterbalance some of the issues they're going to have on the equities market? What are your thoughts on that? Because it's not often that a too big to fail bank that the system is designed to protect actually comes out and says things like this, unless they're trying to cause a little bit of a little tremors in the markets or whatnot. What do you think?
Yeah, no, those are all good points. People also call it an October surprise, and there's also political risk in October as well. Yeah. So, I think that, I do find it very interesting. It's part of this narrative that's shifting as well, too, right? Where, before it was great, and now there's starting to be these kind of panics, So, I think you make valid points. It'll be interesting to see, if it becomes, because what's going to happen comes Wednesday, right? If it's another $175 billion over the course of the next 3 days. or if it's 60 billion a day, that's 180 billion dollars in 3 days. I mean, how are they going to keep being able to downplay it? So
and how will they be able to not? How will they not be able to? How will they be able to keep that POMO, that POMO, whatever you said, name that it's been given, without mainstream media talking about? Is this the quantitative 4? Yeah. Because you got the Peter Schiffs out there that swear by the fact QE4 is coming and that it's going to be necessary. So, yeah, and go ahead.
Yeah, because the other thing is. Yeah, anyway, go ahead. So go ahead. I'll come back to that in a second.
We'll keep it moving. So let's get to the chat a little bit. And so
it's just a dollar shortage thing that gets me. The dollar bears out of there.
Yeah, I'm trying to wonder. I'm trying to figure out how does all those institutions that are so dry right now, how are they actually going to borrow and be able to pay back within a 24-hour period? Nevertheless, what happened to all those funds that were used for corporate buybacks and executive dividends and payouts? Because I think it was every time the Federal Reserve, central banks have their their valuations on the status of the banks, whatever, they always get thumbs up for them to have enough capital, and then they that approves the banks to give their bonuses. Yeah, the stress test that approves the banks to start giving out executive bonuses and all that stuff like that. But think about it, all that money they gave out probably cut into their reserves, so called, to where now they paid all the damn bankers off and loaded their pockets now, so where it's time to pay your corporate taxes now, and they don't have enough funds for it. So, And so another thing here somebody talked about I wanted to touch on was the whole Thomas Cook, tip of the iceberg. And so apart from just hearing about it, I wasn't even aware of Thomas Cook Airlines agency or whatever. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that the beginning of something more to come? Because I know we had WOW Airlines this past summer that went belly up, stranded people all across the northern hemisphere of Europe. So is this going to be one of many more airlines to go belly up, you think?
It's like a travel agency. I don't know exactly how it's set up, but it was apparently like one of the largest or the largest travel agency in Europe that merged with this one, and then it was like a mega merger thing. But what I actually thought, what it made me think about more than anything is just the whole notion of counterparty risk, right? Because we talk about this with gold and silver all the time. If what you're trying to do is reliant on somebody else, there's risk there, right? Like a gold coin or a silver coin in your hand, that's yours, right? And that's saying, you can get it out of my dead hands, right? But when it comes to like travel, that's counterparty risk. So you got, how many hundreds of thousands of people are like literally stranded right now? Stranded. Probably got dirty underwear on for the last 2 days. Spend all their cash, in overpriced airport food. But, it just goes to show you that the system is, if it's not complex enough, right? Because it's so complex is why we're seeing these breakdowns. And, then the other thing is, how much is this going to cost the UK, right? Because they're basically making it look like it's a government problem, right? And they're looking for a government solution. First of all, why is it a government problem? Why is the government even doing anything in the first place,
Exactly.
If I'm traveling down North Carolina to go see a football game or something, and I get a flat tire and stranded and my car needs repair, the federal government's not going to come in and put me on a Greyhound bus. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Watch this. So thumbing through some of this, and so on the screen I have a timeline of the last couple of hours of how things have been playing out and how media has reported on it. And so it says here, some 600,000 passengers are affected, with 150 UK citizens stranded abroad. And then I saw something a while ago where it mentioned that here's a Dominic Walsh, I'm not sure who Twitter account this is, but it says Thomas Cook's German airline Condor continues to operate and is asking Berlin for a 200 million bailout. It says if it gets it, that would mean the Spanish, Turkish, and German governments would have been willing to support the Thomas Cook, but not the UK government. So the call for a $200 million bailout, I guess, to either help people get back home or what, I don't know.
Yeah, and this is just money printing, So you got massive money printing with the Fed and their daily interventions. You got massive money printing that's about to happen because of this crisis in Europe, because obviously it's not just the UK. I thought it was like obviously it was me, my ignorance, thinking the UK, but no, it's more than just UK. You said there was only like 150,000 there, but there's 600,000 overall.
Yeah.
So, all of these signs are just pointing to there's just going to be this great print all around the world, and it's all starting. I mean, 200 million, and that's probably a lowball estimate too, because whenever they go to the government to ask for money, they always ask for less than what it ends up being. Right?
Because it wouldn't you wouldn't be able to sell that if you needed a 500 billion, 500 million.
Yeah.
You say,
we need $1 trillion.
Just give me 250 right now.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that's definitely something that's newsworthy, because I have hundreds of thousands of people stuck and stranded, and that's just one airline. And think about the contagion, the ripple effects that will be impacted by this one event, because you got connecting flights and carriers having to now reroute.
Right.
What?
I just did some simple math. 600,000 people. So let's estimate that to sort this all out, it would cost $1,000 per person. And I'm talking about the government coming to step in and having to pay that government employee's salary. I'm talking about the airlines and the resale. That's $600 million just in that. If you look at it a pure mathematical sense, that on net, it's going to end up costing $1,000 per person to fix this. That's a massive amount of money.
Yeah, and that's just to get people home. Not to mention next week's operations and all the stuff moving forward. So I wonder, in all this mess, what was the original catalyst that led to them not having the funds to finish off operations leading into this week? So, we'll see, man. There's going to be more to this story that will be revealed for sure.
So that's not an insignificant number of people.
Not at all. So let's get back into the chat. Let's see who's out here watching, who's tuning in with us. Let me see, 200 billion. It says, I'm here happy when I have extra $300 to buy silver, and those mofos are printing billions. Yeah. And so watch this. So in regards to the Federal Reserve's accommodative policy that will become commonplace, it has me thinking about monetary policy now has already changed the way finances operate from a corporate standpoint, because institutions can go borrow with no problems and won't really have to repay, because I don't think they'll be held accountable, because once again, nobody goes to jail in the higher ups. All the way down to your mom and pop's business, and all the way to your just personal savings of your paycheck. If we got the Federal Reserve out here monetizing in billions a day, it's only a matter of time for that stuff spills out into the real economy, because you can't continue to cut on the liquidity spigot and the money just stays where you're trying to get it, actually pump it to. Eventually, it's going to flood and it's going to spill out. And when it spills out, it's going to spill out into the consumer area, where food, price, gas, all that stuff that we need on a daily basis will be impacted by inflation. And at that point, wages don't improve at a rate that really stays up with real inflation. Fixed income, forget about it. Like all those practical financial instruments that were sold to the public will be very problematic. So this is my opinion, but I was saying that it's going to be considered financially irresponsible to stick with your current model of operating your own personal finances in an environment where they're easing and printing up the wazoo. So that's just my personal opinion, but yeah.
Yeah, and I really got to write down these points, because you make so many great points that they just come in and out. But because that was my point. If the Fed is not concerned right now about this repo market operation that they're doing to the tunes of tens of billions a day, once inflation really starts taking off, right, they're going to be denying it and saying it's no big deal. So people are going to be struggling to pay for anything, and they're going to be like, well, we don't really see signs of inflation.
We can't find inflation.
Yes.
We don't know what you're talking about. We're still struggling to get our 2%. So watch it. So what? This is another thing I mentioned. The very two mandates that the Federal Reserve is responsible that they've given, the government's given them responsibility for, price stability and maximum unemployment, will be the very two things that go belly up when it goes with maximum unemployment and unbelievable inflation. Those two things, what they're supposed to be mandated to be responsible for, will end up being the primary problems that humanity faces, or citizens in this country faces, especially, in my opinion. Yeah. So,
yes. And that actually brings me into a point that I wanted to make, which is basically a follow-up.
Okay, no, so before you get to your point, someone here, Richard, it looks like a question. It says, will Social Security checks still be safe? Paul, I'll let you touch on that one.
Yeah, they'll be safe, but it's going to be worthless money. I think that everything is going up tenfold in price. So I'm talking about $35 bottles of ranch salad dressing, $1,500 pair of run-of-the-mill tennis shoes, and $10,000 plane tickets. Right. So, back in 2016, during one of the debates, Hillary and Trump were asked the question, with all of this entitlement spending, are you going to cut anything, or who would you cut if the government had to cut spending? And they both said that they will not cut that spending, right? So everybody's going to get paid. But if everybody gets paid, so if a person gets, $1,800 a month or whatever it is that they're getting, well, what is that going to buy? It's not going to buy anything. So yes, they're going to default through inflation.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm actually going to find something. I'm going to try to find an old video and play it in a second if I can find it. But yeah, we'll keep it moving. So the long story of that is that obligations will be met nominally. Yes, but when it comes to purchasing power of those digits, of those numbers, that's when people are going to really find out that something went wrong amongst all this money printing, because they're gonna live up to their promises. Alan Greenspan mentioned they can make sure you get your check, but he couldn't guarantee what it's going to purchase. So
like the cheap cut of meat, like the stew meat is what they call it in a lot of different places. I actually like that cut because you cook it like slow and you can get it real nice and soft, and it's got some fat on it. So I mean, it makes it nice for some like slow simmered like taco meat, or like just stew meat, right? Just regular old beef. But it's like, to buy one of these packages to feed my family, it's between $13 and $15 for one package. And I was like, wow, doesn't it seem like everything's getting expensive? And then my wife showed me, right, this creamer that she uses. And this creamer used to have 20 ounces in it for coffee creamer, right? I know she's weird. Some people put stuff in their coffee, which is odd to me. But at any rate, 20 ounces is what it used to have. Mike, it has 14 ounces in it now, and it's the same exact price. That's a 30% price increase, 30% from the last time she bought creamer.
Wow.
Right? So it's like, yes, I mean, this inflation is going to be massive. And it only gets to a point where, you can't shrink it so much, or then it's not even like a bottle of it anymore.
Yeah, it's just going to be droplets. You're going to pay for a droplet of some creamer.
Yeah.
So since we're live, I want to definitely, because if we don't continue to check in with the chat, we can get caught up. And so it looks like there's about 300 or so people tuning in thus far. So appreciate you guys spending time with us as always. If you got questions, if you got thoughts, feel free to call us 567-336-0844 or highlight at Silver Doctors in the chat so we can get your thoughts or questions answered.
Yeah, give us a call. I'm wanting someone to call me up and ask me a question about Bitcoin.
And so watch this. So we do have a call. Let's find out what this one is about. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Pat from Alabama. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good, Pat from Alabama. What's in your mind this afternoon?
Well, I'm ready to say letterbuck, whatever it is.
Say that one more time.
Down to Mississippi, did some investing down there at a legal table where they watch and make sure that they don't cheat me or manipulate me. Did well. Found out something that you can call J.M. Bullion from the office at a casino, and they'll sell you silver from that office using the casino's money to come to your house.
Really?
It's pretty neat, isn't it?
So you're saying in the casinos down in Mississippi, you can call J.M. Bullion and you can use the casino's coins and they'll sell you metals?
Yeah, if they owe you $3,000, they'll put it anywhere you want it.
Wow, okay. That's a different way of getting your weight up. Using your casino chips. You can use your casino chips as tender down there.
I was either going to gamble it or I was going to invest it. So I invested it. But this current situation, letterbuck, it don't matter. We can't control it.
Yeah, that's true. It's unavoidable.
And the only thing we can do is what you two fine gentlemen are doing right now is letting the public know which direction we're going.
Yeah.
And that's extremely important to me.
Right. Well, hey, Pat, I appreciate that, my friend. Thanks for sharing that information down there on the casinos accepting chips. And thanks for support, my friend.
All right, well, now y'all have fun, and I do have nothing but praise for both of you.
Appreciate you.
And enjoy yourselves.
Thanks. We will. You do the same, my friend.
Yes, thank you. We do appreciate everybody tuning in and participating. It's really a good thing, Mike.
Yeah, casino chips about metals.
But yeah, I agree. We need to let it buck, right? We need to let this bull buck, or the bucking bronco, or however you want to call it, because that's what we need. That's what free markets do. This whole repo thing is because the markets are trying to do something, and the Fed is not willing to let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, man, that's real talk there. Real talk there. Who else we got? Let's check in the chat. It says, insane global debt bubble should hurry up and rupture. I need a debt jubilee yesterday. Debt jubilee. Yeah, that would be nice. But yet somebody's asset is another person's liability and vice versa. So somebody's going to take a hit. So we have another call. Let's get to this one. Let me see here. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
North Carolina.
How you doing, my friend? What's on your mind this afternoon?
I have a question. Since silver is an industrial and a monetary metal, how will a recession affect the price?
Great question there. Paul, want to touch on that one first?
Yeah, generally, it is understood that when there's a recession, there's less demand for industrial commodities, so the demand for silver would go down. Mm-hmm. Now, on the other side of that, if there is uncertainty with what's going on during a recession, silver can move opposite. Like, for example, if the dollar weakens in the next recession, which I think it will, then silver is going to catch that bid for the monetary metal. Mm-hmm. Furthermore, it's interesting because last week in my interview with Simon Popple, we were talking about the industrial use of silver. Mm-hmm. And this kind of flew under the radar last week. But did you realize this just last week, Amazon announced that they're buying 100,000 electric delivery vans.
Right. Now, from a company here in Michigan.
Yes. So my point is, in the next recession, right, I don't think that industrial use for silver is going to take such a big a hit because of all the progress with electric vehicle, with solar panel development, with all of these green technologies. All of that has massive demand for silver. Yeah. So even as the recession comes, we're still going to see an increase and move towards these newer technologies.
Yeah, I agree. And so definitely, I was watching some commentator mention about, how based upon prior trends, there's always a small hint of deflation. And when that happens, there's a slight dip. But then once monetary policy responds and the printing presses or the spigot is turned up even greater, I think then people are going to realize that, hey, they're about to monetize this situation. So it'll probably spike back up. So we will either have a little bit of a repeat of prior trends or something completely new where metals could take off well before in anticipation of how the Federal Reserves or central banks around the world will respond, because it won't just be an isolated event. It's going to be a global contagion. So as we already see in metals prices at relatively all-time highs in other countries, and they're so-called in recessionary environments, when this damn thing collapses, all together, I can imagine prices running off like never before. So
Yes. And just my last point about that industrial demand, because I do see that as happening this time around the recession as well. I do see people looking for the safe havens in gold and silver, so that's going to have increasing demand. Then I also think the industrial demand is not going to wane in the next recession. Because furthermore, about that electric vehicle thing with Amazon, last summer, the World Gold Council and their Alchemist number 90, they were talking about how electric vehicle use is increasing the demand for silver use in electric vehicles. But they specifically named two car companies. Mm-hmm. They named Volkswagen, and I can't remember the other company that they named. It might have been Toyota, but I'm not 100% certain. But my point is, this company that Amazon's ordering 100,000 vans from wasn't even on the radar.
Right. I've never heard of it. Plymouth, Michigan. So so the question is, how would it be able to meet that supply or not? So we got a couple of calls coming in, and so I don't want to interrupt you, but yet we got a call here, so I want to get to the news as we can. So, hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Frank. I'm calling from Pasadena, California.
Frank from California. How you doing, my friend? What's on your mind this afternoon?
I'm just thinking with all these black swans, the whole repo thing, Saudi Arabia and everything, I'm wondering, I kind of followed, Paul 50 Cent theory about the controlled demolition. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, do you guys think with all these things going on, do you think the controlled demolition will happen before 2020, or do you think there'll be find some way to get happen for that.
Good thought there, Paul. What do you think? A controlled demolition before 2020 or after that?
No, my thought has been that it's not so much the year as it is the election. So I'm thinking that anytime between now until the election in November of 2020 is when we're going to start to really see the pain. How's it going to be brought on? Is it going to be like just a constant ratcheting down, decline in the stock market, decline in the dollar, increase in the oil prices, people start to feel pain at the pump, right? So a number of steps along the way, but I'm not looking so much as the year as the event, because I think that the plan is if they've extracted enough wealth as they can out of the United States, then they're ready to move on from President Trump and bring someone else in. And that someone else is going to be much worse than Hillary would have ever been. Hillary, she's pretty much like, an embodied demon for that much.
Demon. Yeah. So caller, so we appreciate you calling in. And so I think that we're behind. There's a delay in the response. So you'll be able to hear officially when you cut your phone back on. So appreciate you calling in, my friend. All right, be good. All right.
I hope I answered this question good.
Yeah. And so I was listening. There's a delay in between the call and the response. So we got another caller here. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi there, I'm from California.
1 second.
Can you hear
All
me?
right, go ahead. Yep, go ahead. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name's Tim. I'm calling from California.
Okay, Tim from California.
I got two things I want to quickly cover with you. First of all, this debt to GDP ratio is really frightening when I look at the charts and I see the levels we're at and the lack of political willingness to turn things around. It's downright frightening. But I want to layer on top of that and get your thoughts. There's a real lack of awareness and consciousness amongst the average person. The vast majority of people have no idea what true money is, gold and silver. Very few people that I know even have a recognition of what the price of silver or gold are. We've seen that proven over and over. So I want to get your thoughts on that, the debt to GDP ratio and also the lack of awareness amongst the general population of the value of gold and silver. Thanks.
All right, thanks, my friend. Appreciate you calling. So, Paul, want to touch on that one first?
Before I forget, because the lack of awareness, but here's the thing, right? Yes, I think that the vast majority of people, it's going to be like getting hit on the back of the head with a 2x4 and they never saw it coming. But people will learn really, really quick. And I point to the example of the Mexican peso devaluation in 1994. When they cut first of all, they cut 3 zeros off of the peso and they issued a new peso currency. And then they devalued it twice over the span of 6 days in 1994. And all this had to do with them getting into NAFTA. But my point is, one day they had a certain peso system, right? And then the next day it was a brand new coin, right? So that 1,000 peso, right? 1,000 pesos ended up being 1 peso. So my point is, people will learn how to adapt to this really quickly. So they don't understand gold and silver now. And that's why, like you like to say, getting your weight up, Mike, because, we have the opportunity to be the ones that decide the future course of how this is going to be rebuilt. And the people will learn really fast. And it's just that since they don't know, well, they're going to struggle through it, right? But I kind of went around and probably answered it in a backwards way. But I do find that fascinating, because I asked people in Mexico when I go down there, what was it like during the 1994 devaluation? And they were like, well, we had no savings, so it didn't even matter. And what do we look at when we look in the United States? Most people can't come up with just a few $100, right? People don't have any savings in the United States. So, it's just going to be like not even skipping a beat. And then they'll learn real quick what real money is.
Yeah, I do agree. And to touch on the GDP, debt to GDP aspect, I pulled up the U.S. debt clock right now. And so in the very top left-hand section where all that red is at, it gives you an idea as to what he's talking about. And so we got the debt to the GDP ratio currently, according to the measurements here, it's at 105%, which means that we are well beyond borrowing more than we can currently sustain, according to the revenue that comes in. And so it will only get worse. And so it'll be no way, form, or fashion that the United States government will be able to continue on without increasing their expenditures, and they will never be able to cut, slash, or to readjust accordingly because of all the promises extended, which means that all the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the $100+ trillion will have to be dealt with, and they cannot take it away at this point because especially the older portion of the population, 70-something million and counting baby boomers, all put in and expect and anticipate those promises being met. Therefore, it's going to only grow until, I guess, the Federal Reserve either runs out of ink and paper, which I don't think they will be able to because they can always just digitize it. So it's one of the things where it's going to continue to grow. Therefore, as Paul just mentioned about the majority of the population here, especially according to statistics, have less than $1,000 saved up or whatever. So a good portion won't really miss much in this reshuffling. But those that have worked hard, saved, and done everything that they were told to do to be smart, responsible with their personal finances, those are the people who may not fare well because of them holding on to government digital debt obligations, which will prove to be problematic in the days ahead. So gold and silver is one of the things where the baby boomers are aware of it, but yet because they're so conditioned to receive these promises from the government, which are not denominated in gold and silver, they're going to fall victim to it. But I believe a good portion of the baby boomers might have a couple coins sitting around that can buy them some time. But it's the Generation X, Generation Z in the middle, the 30 to 40 and millennials that are going to be screwed. But yet they also don't have much to lose because we haven't really put in heavily for retirement yet because I don't believe in that model in any way. So, yeah, that's my long rant on that situation.
Mike, what place did the United States men's basketball team finish in the last Olympics?
The last Olympics, which was 2016, I want to say they won it. I think
they won it.
I think I draw a blank, but they may have won it
because I know they've been eliminated a few times.
Yeah, they lost flat out to Argentina. I remember in 2004.
Yeah, Argentina.
Anyway.
Yeah, I remember that. But my point is, when they first started allowing professional NBA players onto, they called it the Dream Team.
Yeah.
And like if you look like at those very first Olympics, like the other teams, they were like posing and taking pictures with the Americans, and it was like, oh my goodness, we're playing basketball against the Americans, and it wasn't even really a game as much as it was like.
Practice.
A practice and just like, wow, we can't believe it. They're asking for their autographs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But this goes on to that point that you're making about, Gen Xers, the millennials generation. I can't remember if they call it Y or Z, but the one after us.
Yeah.
But that's all they know, right? All they know is this dollar system, and it reigns supreme, and it's the best ever. But guess what? We're about to start getting picked off by all these other countries, right? Because it's just this sort of like this cockiness where people think that they're the best and that nothing's ever going to happen to the dollar, and then it's just that blind faith in the government, right? And these are going to be, these are the recipes for serious disaster here for most people.
Yeah, I do agree. And so I'm just looking into the chat here. And so William Smith says, question, is this going to be a slow process over a year or not? What are your thoughts on that? It's going to be slow, or this is going to go exponentially rapid, in your opinion, Paul? Which one?
I think it's going to go exponentially rapid. Remember, we saw the oil markets and the dollar thrust into chaos over the course of just 6 months in 2014. And if it's timed to the 2020 election, like I think it's going to be, we're just a little over 13 months away, right? And that means that there has to be a lot of pain that's felt before the election for people to fit the narrative that President Trump actually lost, right? The election, because I think that's what's going to happen if they've extracted all the wealth that they can from the country. So I don't see it drawing out for a long time. Besides, that slow hyperinflation was over 100 years. The Great Print was over 10 years. So, what do we do if we take it down from there? This is going to be over a year. And that's pretty much about it for this crack up boom, right? Yeah. Because we see how it goes down by 90% every time.
Yeah. And so my personal thoughts and just looking out, what's currently underway now, and because of the whole Federal Reserve liquidity spigot being turned on, I think it's going to stay on. So they're going to continue to try to control the amount of flow out of that spigot as far as the debt monetization of treasuries, because they're going to be the only buyer pretty soon, if not already. Therefore, it's going to have an even calmness to it for maybe, I think they can probably put out a year, maybe a year and a half, if there's no complete contagion from outside brought in, and to where they got to cut it up at a much higher velocity. But yet I think the this can go on for another year or two of monetizing, and we want to see the reinflation of a lot of asset bubbles in the housing market. Because right now, houses, I'm seeing more and more for sale signs, but those houses aren't moving as well as everything else. So the equities markets, Dow may go to 35,000 by middle of spring or something, just something crazy. And then there's going to be a contagion where when it crashes, it's going to be a prolonged. I'm looking at 2020 to 2030 time frame of complete chaos and restructuring of a global monetary system, as well as all the political chaos which is going to happen here. So I think this next decade will be the complete cycle of destruction and wealth transferring. And then this next year or two will be the pretty much the start of how all this stuff plays out. And it's going to be an adjustment for all of us, because what's going to be rolled out will be the big question. It's going to be something digital based. It's going to be a bigger government of all types of invasive surveillance techniques. And, they're going to try to take away guns and all that stuff in this next 10-year window. So it's going to be a slow to fast, then a prolonged cycle, in my opinion. So hopefully not, but hopefully I'm completely wrong. But we'll see.
No, yeah, and I think you're right. I think that the 10 years though are going to be more of like I think over the next year, like you said, it's going to be when it kicks off, and then that's going to be the collapse. And then the next 10 years is like as the dust is settling, people realize just how bad things are, and they progressively get worse, right? Like as supplies run up, as food becomes more expensive, as gasoline becomes more expensive, as the dollar inflates away, all of those things, right? So we're going to have that kickoff to that year-long, I don't even think it's going to be a year, because I think it's going to be to the election, and then it's going to be just that long suffering.
Long suffering.
But I got to make this point. I keep not being able to make this point because it ties in exactly with what we're saying.
Go ahead.
Remember last week we had the question about wages in a deflationary environment?
Okay, yeah.
I thought about this a little bit more, right? Because someone was saying, well, wages go down, but not down, but your debt stays the same. So the debt becomes more unaffordable or something like that. And it was like some guy who was like being interviewed on Real Vision, but I can't remember what the name was. But my point is, if your wages are going down and you are having trouble paying for things, are you really going to pay your debt? And especially if it's not secured debt, no, you don't care what that debt is. If your wages are going down and you got to make a choice between paying MasterCard and Visa or getting food and getting to work, yes, you're going to be doing that. So that's one. Two, we talk about the income inequality, right? The top 10%, the top 1%, then the bottom 90%, right? And if you want to talk about like the bottom 80%, their wages have been going down for years and years and years. So yes, there will be wage deflation, but it's going to be for like these posh government jobs, or like how you see, like, I don't know what the statistic is, but like for every one person that like actually is hands-on healthcare, there's like 5 people working behind the scenes to make it happen. Like all of these wages that will be coming down will also, are they jobs that are really necessary anyway, right? Because, the government's going to have to face the fact that, there are way more jobs than a government is supposed to have, right? So yes, I mean, there is going to be that destruction. But if you're in the bottom 80% or below, I don't think you have a thing to worry about, because that deflation already happened. Yeah. Even in possibly in the top, even in the bottom 90%, right? It could be just the top 10% and above.
Yeah, that's anyway it goes. That's going to be very uncomfortable for a lot of people, because especially the people that have become dependent upon government assistance, which I don't know offhand, but I want to say I saw a statistic a while back that said something like well over half of people receive some type of aid or something from the government. And so having that cut off or modified or given still, but it don't purchase you much, going to be uncomfortable. Therefore, it's going to be shifted back on the per individual to take care of themselves like it should be. And then it's going to be like, okay, most people don't know what to do or how to, because they've never been taught or never been in a position where they had to. But I think this next decade will spur so much creative potential in people. People will be forced to think and to respond according to their own needs. And yeah, I think it's going to be problematic, but also beneficial for a lot of people, because they're going to have to begin thinking again, because we're being so dumbed down by technology and so dependent upon people making decisions for us, where everyone's going to be challenged, but hopefully there's people come out on the other end better than they go into this thing. So that's my desire. So, but hey, Paul, we're approaching an hour point. We are at an hour officially. You ready to dial back this afternoon?
Yep, we can dial back for today. We'll be on Wednesday like usual. And man, it's
Right.
great having everybody call in and participate. I really appreciate everybody coming in a lot.
Exactly. I
It's
appreciate
been great.
that. So as always, people, it's been great hanging out this afternoon. For those that are still on there watching us, don't be afraid to donate a thumbs up to the video. And I usually say, or a thumbs down, whatever you work, or just, showing energy to support the channel would be great. As well as if you found anything informative, feel free to share this information because once again, a lot of people don't know what's currently underway right now and they're going to be blindsided. So you might want to show them some love by just sharing this information with them or sharing the video or whatever and have them come join us on a live stream this Wednesday. So this Wednesday, invite a friend. You bring a friend with you and tell them to check us out and hang out with us, and we can definitely try to share our thoughts. And if anybody out there can prove any of this wrong, feel free to call in. I'm always okay with being proven wrong because once again, it's just my opinion. So Paul, how about you? Do you mind being proven wrong?
Yeah, I'm ready for these Bitcoin questions, especially with the fact that it can be cracked in like no time because they're at like 128 qubits for quantum computing right now.
So I just did a video not long ago about that, about how quantum supremacy, Google's program, will be able to crack it by 2022. So that's going to be very problematic. So,
but Google's not even the one that's leading in that, right? There's already other companies that are already more advanced in the quantum computing.
Yeah, China apparently has, apart from me hearing about this recent event here, China already had some type of quantum something or another that was already capable of doing some damage. So, so it's going to always boil back down to being physical, getting your weight up, going back to what it used to be, back when every single note we had was redeemable, had redeemable for gold and silver on it. That's your best line of defense in the days ahead because that's just how things are meant to be, I believe, in my opinion. So
it always is. It always does. I mean, it's not us saying that. We always go back to gold and silver.
Yeah. So with that being the case, everybody's been great. We could have went on for another 10 minutes on that one, but let's cut it short right there. We'll pick up again Wednesday at 12. Definitely join us. Invite a friend. See you later. Be blessed. Peace.